Rust is not a game for everyone. The combination of hard gameplay mechanics as well as tough PvP encounters makes it a game only few can enjoy, but you might be one of those. Now Rust is set in a harsh post-apocalyptic world where your main goal is to survive. You start with nothing but a rock and a torch, and you must gather resources, build shelters, and defend yourself from other players and the environment. And the game is definitely well known for its intense PvP and the thrill of building and raiding bases. And the world of Rust is vast and open. It is filled with diverse biomes like forests, rivers, and mountains. The environment is also dynamic, meaning that the weather and day-night cycle can affect the gameplay tremendously. And what makes Rust really stand out is the focus on PvP interactions. You can form alliances, build communities, or become a lone wolf, and you'll never know if someone's gonna help you or betray you. Now the main gameplay of Rust is all about survival. You need to gather resources, craft tools and weapons, build shelters, and defend yourself against other players. Now you start off with nothing but just a rock and a torch, but as you collect wood, stone, and metal, you can craft more advanced gear and weapons. This also makes the game very hands-on and immersive. For example, you might start your day by chopping wood to build a small hut, then go hunting for animals to gather food, and then later on materials for crafting better gear, which leads into the next mechanic, crafting. At the beginning, you can only craft very basic items, like a stone hatchet or a wooden spear, but as you progress, you'll find blueprints or research new items that allow you to create more advanced weapons like guns and explosives, and better structures to build your base. And this progression system will continuously work throughout the entire game, so you always have new goals to work towards. This is also seen in the base building mechanic. You can use gathered resources to build shelters and bases, and these protect you both from the elements and from other players. And you might start off with a basic simple wooden shack, and then later on build massive metal fortresses. Now the game's combat system is very crucial. You can engage in PvP battles using anything from bows and arrows to fully automatic rifles, and this combat can be very intense and often involves strategy and quick thinking. You might need to sneak up on another player to steal the resources or even defend your own base from a raid. And in terms of the overall mechanics, Rust definitely caters more to players who enjoy survival games where base building and combat are a big thing. The game offers complex systems and mechanics that actually offer a ton of replayability. And in Rust, the progression system is all about moving from basic survival to becoming a powerhouse. And you can definitely feel the difference between early, mid, and end game, both in terms of your skills, but also your available resources. Now one of the main things to keep in mind when looking at Rust is that the game does not have a traditional storyline or even side quests. Instead, you need to create your own story. This is done by forming alliances, betraying other players, or building a massive fortress with your friends. And therefore, every playthrough can be different. And the game is definitely more about creating your own narrative, which might disappoint you if you love a more traditional storyline to follow. The game has a large open world map that you can explore freely, and this exploration is essential because different areas will have different resources. The forests are of course great for gathering wood, while the desert might have more metal ore. And you might also find abandoned buildings that can contain great loot and blueprints. So this exploring thing sounds pretty great, right? And it definitely is good if you find rare resources and blueprints. However, you also run the risk of running into hostile players, and this can add a lot of excitement and tension to the game. Which brings me to probably the most unique aspect of the game, the dynamic player interaction system. The way PvP works in Rust makes it really stand out from similar games, and the way you can form alliances and betray each other later on creates your own story, and adds a ton of layer of unpredictability. For example, you might start the game solo, but along the way you might meet other players and decide to team up, because if you're together you can gather resources faster, build stronger bases, and protect each other. Just be careful who you turn your back to, and this is where the game will make or break you. In most other survival games, the challenges you'll meet are primarily environmental or AI based. In Rust, it is definitely the other players, and the game was definitely designed this way as well, as PvE servers just don't feel the same. But more on that later. And Rust is known for its challenging gameplay, and can be quite tough especially for new players. The game definitely does not hold your hand. You're not gonna be spoon-fed with tutorials or guides, and you're gonna have to learn through experience, which can be very rewarding but also very tough. And the learning curve can be quite steep. When you first start, you will have nothing, and you must gather resources quickly to survive. And it is quite common to be attacked and killed almost instantly when you first start. And even more experienced players can face major issues. While you might be a lot better at gathering resources and building bases, a well-coordinated raid by other players will still set you back significantly. And no matter how experienced you are, there'll always be someone out there smarter than you. And Rust definitely caters overall more to the hardcore player who enjoys the difficult competitive gameplay. If you can only play a few hours a week, you might find the constant threat of losing everything due to a raid to be quite stressful, as the required time to build and maintain a big base is quite steep, as the game requires a lot of time and effort to build and maintain a base, gather resources, and defend it against other players. But if you're a hardcore player who has a strong game phase, you might enjoy Rust a lot. Now Rust also have different servers you can join, which can affect the difficulty by a lot. Some servers might make the game easier, such as no PvP, while others make it more hardcore and have very strict survival conditions. Now in terms of the graphics, it actually has pretty good graphics, especially considering how large the open world is. The game also uses realistic textures and lighting to make the environment feel quite real. You can see details in the trees, the rocks and the water, which makes exploring the world more enjoyable. The sound and music also play a big part. You can hear the wind blowing, animals roaring, and other players' footsteps. And all of this can either make you quite aware or paranoid. And this combination of realistic graphics and sound effects create a quite tense and immersive atmosphere that really adds to the harsh world and the excitement of the game. Now let's look at some pros and cons. The first pro is definitely the immersive survival experience. You need to gather resources, build shelters, and protect yourself from dangers. And mechanics can offer a lot in terms of replayability and overall fun. The next pro is the PvP. Now this game is definitely known for its multiplayer aspect. You can team up with friends or strangers to form alliances and then engage in massive PvP encounters. And this social aspect can add a lot of fun and unpredictability. The next pro is the updates. Since the launch of Rust, the game has improved a lot. If you go back and look at some older footage, you can see how much has changed. They constantly add new features, fix bugs, and make the game overall better. This also means that if you at some point take a break, if you then come back in a year or two, there'll be a lot of fun new things to explore. Now for the cons. The first is a steep learning curve. It is quite tough for new players, and it definitely does not hold your hand, and you'll definitely find yourself struggling a lot at first, and you'll need to learn a lot by trial and error. And the next con is a toxic community. Sometimes the other players you encounter can be quite aggressive or unfriendly, to say the least, and you will meet people that are straight up toxic. And not only that, as a new player, you might find it quite hard to survive against the more experienced, hostile players. But with all that in mind, let's grade the game. And Rust definitely deserves a solid 8 out of 10. The game excels in providing an immersive and realistic survival experience. The need to gather resources, build shelters, and protect yourself from other players keeps the gameplay quite exciting and challenging. The multiplayer aspect, where you can form alliances or engage in battles, adds a really unique social element that'll either enhance or completely destroy the overall experience for you. And the game definitely has its drawbacks. The steep learning curve can be quite off-putting for new players, and you'll have a lot to learn by trial and error. There are also still a few technical issues and performance issues, especially on lower-end PCs. So make sure to check the recommended system requirements before buying it. But in conclusion, Rust is a really good game if you enjoy survival challenges and the PvP interaction of it. If you love the thrill of gathering resources, building shelters, and engage with other people in a quite realistic but fun environment, you should definitely try Rust. However, if you prefer games that are a bit more beginner friendly or have a less aggressive community, Rust might not be the best fit for you. But the game does offer a really rewarding experience if you're willing to put in the effort and become the master of the game mechanics and own the other players. Now, if you found this review helpful and it gave you some insight into buying Rust, consider hitting the like button. It's free and it helps the channel out a ton. And if you want to see more game reviews, I highly recommend checking out the video on the screen now, and I'll see you in that video.